What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another Clash Mini video on the channel. In today's video, we are going to be going over the tier list, the updated Season 3 tier list. This time, we're going to have a Royal Ghost in here with the Skeleton King. Let's just jump right into it, and we're actually going to do it a little bit differently this time. Let me know if you guys like it. I'm not going to show you all the heroes at once. I'm just going to put the heroes and the minis in the same tier, and we're going to go from D, C, B, A, and then the S tier. All right, so here we go. Starting it off with the D tier, we have Archer Queen and Skeleton King as your heroes. Unfortunately, right now, the Skeleton King and the Archer Queen just are not part of the meta. The Archer is too strong. It takes out the Archer Queen, and the Skeleton Queen just is not powerful enough. Hopefully, it's going to be a buff in the near future to make the Skeleton King a little bit more viable, and the Archer Queen needs a little bit of a buff as well. Next up, we have the minis in the D tier. Magic Archer just can't get any value, and it cannot get rolling in the current meta, and it is going to unfortunately be in the D tier. The Archer just does way too much damage, and it takes it out, and you just cannot get the good angles right now with the Magic Archer. Especially, it's susceptible to Spear Goblins, the Bowlers. It just is not the way to go right now. Next up, we are going to have the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie is a very good mini, but unfortunately, right now, without the Clash ability, without the fast speed up in the beginning, it just does not get enough value. Maybe it will be decent when the Royal Ghost becomes a portion of the meta, but right now, unfortunately, the Valkyrie is going to be in the D tier. Next up, we have the Healing Ranger and we have the Battle Healer. Both of these healers right now just are not in the meta. They just get taken out way too quickly. The Archer does too much damage. The Barbarian's damage is too high, and so is the Spear Goblin. These minis just do not get enough value because a mini is already eliminated before they are able to be healed, so that is why they are in the D tier. Next up, we have the C tier. Shield Maiden and Wave Master are going to be our heroes into the C tier here. Shield Maiden and Wave Master are okay heroes. They're kind of tankier heroes inside of the game, but unfortunately right now, tanks are not good enough because minis absolutely do way too much damage and blast through them. Especially at the lower levels, they just do not have enough HP to get the value that you need inside of a Clash Mini match. The Shield Maiden with the shield up, unfortunately, the Barbarian King is everywhere, and so is the Royal Champion, so they just do too much damage. They do 2 damage or 4 damage, and they just take down the Shield Maiden shield. Wave Master with the recent nerfs, and also the Wave Master just not being as strong in lower levels because you have the Countess, which is up there, you have the Royal Champion, and you have the Barbarian King. 3 really good answers to the Wave Master. Royal Ghost, Witch, Wizard, Musketeer, Dark Goblin, Knight, and Guard are going to be in our C tier here. The Knight actually probably could be more of a B tier or A tier mini, but unfortunately right now, I just feel like the Barbarian, the Spear Goblin, and the Archer are just so strong that the Knight and the Guard, unfortunately at 2 costs, need to be lower on the tier list. Yes, could you make an argument for the Knight being in the B tier? Absolutely, but for this, we're going to leave him in the C tier. Royal Ghost just is not there yet with the power, just doesn't have enough health. Yes, it does 2 damage, but I would like it to have 1 damage and be more of a support mini because right now it just doesn't do enough. I'd like it to be more of like a lumberjack type of mini to where it is tanky-ish and it is able to boost allies, and that's kind of what it does. It just soaks damage as far as that's concerned. Right now, it's kind of trying to be a damage dealer, kind of being a buffer. It's just, there's just too much going on with the Royal Ghost, and it just is going to need to stay in the C tier for now. Which, yes, it just got a recent buff. Yes, it just moved up in the tier list to C instead of D. But unfortunately for the Witch, it is still not strong enough. It just takes too long to super, and by the time the super is out, it's either eliminated from the field or just too many minis are done before it gets any value. It might be good with the Witch to protect it, but the Witch is the D tier, so, or should I say the Archer Queen, but the Archer Queen's in the D tier, so no bueno there. Wizard, unfortunately, there's no heal cut to be needed. Wizard doesn't get enough value. There's not enough tanks in the game. There's usually, you know, Spear Goblins, Archers, a lot of backline, so the Wizard just isn't that strong. The Musketeer, pretty good mini, but unfortunately for the Musketeer, she struggles right now because you need it to be 3 stars, and right now the knockback really doesn't do anything because the Archer will clear her out. Dark Goblin, once again, there is an Archer that's in every single deck. Dark Goblin just gets cleared out way too quickly, never will be able to get ramp up, and never be able to do the damage. The Knight and the Guard we went over before. They're good minis. They're tanky minis. They might squeak into the meta. Yes, they could potentially be B tier, but right now we're going to leave them in C tier because there are already 3 or 4, should I say, really good 2-cost minis in the meta right now. B tier, we're going to have the Monk here in the B tier. Arguably could be possibly even in the A tier, but in lower levels it is B tier, so we're going to leave it there. It does have a lot of value, but unfortunately it is only really good versus the Barbarian King and the Countess. The World Champion just absolutely dominates it every single time, and if it ever hits a Giant Skeleton, it just almost loses the match and doesn't really get value. You really need the value from the first Monk Super, and if it doesn't get it, it's a struggle bus. Here we go. The minis for the B tier are going to be the Ice Wizard. Ice Wizard are really good. It slows down everything, but unfortunately right now, like we said, there's just too many good S and A tier 2-cost minis for the Ice Wizard to be super viable. Yes, it's really good. Yes, it could potentially be in the A tier the moment the Archer gets nerfed a little bit, but for right now we're going to leave it into the B tier. Electric Wizard, yes, it probably should be C tier, but I am going to make the Electric Wizard work. I think it's a good mini. I think it's a strong mini. I think the meta just is not there for it, but that does not mean the mini is weak whatsoever, so that's why it's going to be in the B tier. Now, the Mega Knight, maybe it could be in the A tier, but the Countess decks that use the Mega Knight, unfortunately, it's very, very heavy. I'm going to leave it in the B tier here. Yes, it could be in the A tier. Yes, it's the tankiest mini in the game, but I still think it needs a little bit of a rework, potentially to some of the abilities. I think it's really, really good, but I think just the 4 cost right now inside of Clash Mini, my personal opinion is it's just a little bit too much. P.E.K.K.A is going to be the next up into the B tier here. Good mini overall, probably one of the most balanced minis inside of Clash Mini. Unfortunately, balance doesn't really matter when we have a big beefy boy as a Barbarian King in the meta, which just boosts everything up. Everything does 2 damage now, and the P.E.K.K.A kind of loses a little bit of its flair. Being able to critical strike is great, being able to do damage is great, but unfortunately it just attacks too slow to be in the meta right now. It's still a strong overall mini. Swordsman could be really good, but unfortunately right now you just have the Barbarian. You have to choose Barbarian or Swordsman, and you're going to choose the Barbarian every single time. That's why the Swordsman is in the B tier. I don't think it needs to be worked on. I don't think it needs to be buffed. I don't think it needs to be nerfed. I think once the meta shift, the Swordsman will be good. Mini P.E.K.K.A is the next up into the B tier here. Mini P.E.K.K.A, a very, very solid mini. Has the Dissipate, pretty good versus Countess, pretty good versus Barbarian King, but it struggles very, very heavily versus World Champion, and that is why we're going to put it in the B tier. Giant Skeleton, whoo, yes, it's going to be in the B tier, dropped from the A tier. Reason being is because World Champion is just everywhere, and when you have a Giant Skeleton in your deck and you're playing a World Champion, it really doesn't get that much value. For that fact alone, it is going to be in the B tier. A tier here, we are going to have the World Champion and the Countess. If this was a level 5, 6 tier list, I would put the World Champion in the S tier. So that's the change right here, and the Countess would probably still be in the A tier. So what I think is as you can see, the Barbarian King is still not on this list, so that's obviously in the S tier. I would swap or even maybe just put up the Royal Champion into the S tier in the level 1 through 7 S tier list. So right now, just keep that in mind, but the World Champion, very, very solid overall mini. Probably one of the best minis inside of Clash Mini, but I like, and I'm going back to only having 1 mini and 1 hero in the S tier, because that's just how I want to do these. S tier is for that. I put the Barbarian in the S tier in the last tier list. That's not the case right now, as you can see. Countess, very, very strong hero. Leave it in the A tier for now. Fisherman hot take here, jumped up 2 tiers since the last tier list. It was in the C tier. The reason being is because it stops clash abilities. If you are able to stop the Barbarian and the Spear Goblin right off the bat, bring them back, damage them, destroy them, you get value. If you're able to pull their Archer, you get value and can win a match like that. For the sole purpose of the RNG rolling, I am going to put the Fisherman in the A tier because it can single-handedly win you a Clash Mini match. A tier also the Lumberjack. The Lumberjack can use its Clash ability, speed up the Archer, get value, speed up your Spear Goblin. GG, well played. It can sit in the back. It can tank other Archer shots. It really is a mini that can do everything. It's going to be in the A tier. Miner is our next mini up here in the A tier. If you max your Miner, it's actually pretty good. A lot of people will probably be like in chat, and it probably should be in the B tier, but I'm going to keep it in the A tier here. It's very, very good. It's very, very strong. It does shut down archers. It is a decent, reliable counter to that, so I'm going to leave it in the A tier. Golden Giant is our next mini up. Golden Giant is just a tank, and it straight up counters the Royal Champion, and that is why it is in the A tier. Point blank simple, best tank for 3 elixir, plus it counters the Royal Champion. That's why it's in the A tier. Prince is going to be in the A tier as well, because the charge could be devastating. If you are able to knock back a Barbarian King, a Countess, a Monk, a Shield Maiden, a Wave Master, a Skeleton King, GG, well played, as that's going to sit in the back forever. Just really, really good with a lot of Clash decks as well, and that is why the Prince is going to be in the A tier. Next up, we are going to have the Bowler. The Bowler is a very, very, very strong and very, very good mini inside of Clash Mini. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the Bowler in the A tier. Yes, I think it's very, very good, but it's not super overpoweredly strong, so I'm going to leave it in the A tier here. The roll is strong if you get the value, especially if you're on a mirror tile map, and you could shut things down with it. Spear Goblin, self-explanatory here. You need it 3 stars. You need to get the speed increase. If you're able to get the boast as well, it absolutely goes off with the Barbarian as the buffing unit. So the Barbarian, the Spear Goblin, and the Archer combo, very, very strong, and that is why the Barbarian is going to be in the A tier. I just don't think the Barbarian does really much more than the Clash ability buff, and that is why, for sole purpose of the mini, I'm not going to put it in the S tier, because if I was going to put minis that just buffed other minis into the S tier, the Lumberjack would probably have to go close to that as well. For right now, I'm going to put the Barbarian in the A tier. Could it be in the S tier? Absolutely, but for right now, I am only going to have 1 mini and 1 hero in the S tier for this tier list. Next up, we have the S tier Barbarian King in the S tier here. It boosts the ability of your Archer, of your Spear Goblin. It just does so much damage when that happens. The boost ability is just too strong to overlook, and that is why the Barbarian King is going to be in the S tier. Absolute Chad of a hero. After the recent buff, making its energy from 10 to 8, it just gets off the super faster and is able to make other minis very, very strong. Archer is going to be in the S tier here, as well as our only mini. The reason why the Archer is in the S tier is because it is just very, very strong in the current meta. It just does so much work to each and every single mini inside of Clash Mini, and that is why it is going to be in the S tier. Completely clears out a backline in like 4 seconds. It just does everything you want, and that is why the Archer is going to be our sole mini in the S tier. Thank you guys so much for watching this YouTube video. Hope this video helped you guys get a gauge on what the meta is looking like right now. Let me know in the comments below if you disagree or you agree with anything on this tier list. But until next time, thank you guys so much. I'm not going to have a video tomorrow because it is my birthday celebration week, and my birthday is not till next weekend. But it's a birthday celebration, so I'm going to be back on Monday with some new videos. But thank you guys so much for watching this YouTube video. I love each and every single one of you guys. I'll see you guys on Monday.